Hello and welcome to Southwark Sea Farmers. I'm host and environmental journalist Alexandra Talty. Today's episode is on the Shinnecock Kelp Farmers, and I'm joined here in studio with Danielle Hopson Begun. You told me just before how to say it.
Hopson Begun.
Hopson Begun, Shinnecock Kelp Farmer Communications and Hatchery Technician, and Rebecca Genia, Shinnecock Kelp Farmer and Board of Directors. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I know we have a song to honor the water. If we'd like to open things up with that, Rebecca.
Thank you very much. Tabutne in our language, that means thank you, and Akwe means hello, Hakame means welcome. So thank you for welcoming us here to the studios today to talk about one of our favorite subjects, which is Mother Earth and her water. And this song is to honor our beautiful waters. Nuta awe put kishke kita hanet nuketu umam. Nuta awe put kishke kita hanet nuketu umam. Nuta awe puput kishke kita hanet nuketu umam. My heart is calm. Big waters sing, pray my morning song. My heart is calm. Big waters sing, pray my morning song.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us today. That was really beautiful. And we were really lucky to be able to go to the hatchery last week and film an episode or a short clip of the work that you guys are doing there on Shinnecock Bay at St. Joseph's Villa. But really quickly, if you guys just want to introduce the Shinnecock Kelp Farmers, and then we're going to share our 10-minute video that we did of you guys actually planting and out in the bay.
Sure. You want to take that?
You
Should
can.
I take it? Shinnecock Kelp Farmers are a group of 6 women who reside at Shinnecock, all members of the tribe, all related and cousins, and we work together to fight climate change.
I love that. And so if we could share the video of you guys fighting climate change from St. Joseph Villa and Hampton Bays on Shinnecock Bay, that would be great.
My name is Wabon Tarrant. I'm from the Shinnecock Reservation. I'm a kelp farmer and hatchery technician. So I'm doing hatchery maintenance today, and we have 6 tanks, and this one over here at the end is the furthest along. It was started before the rest of them. And these other ones you can start to see the kelp growing, and eventually it will look like this one over here. These are spools of string, and they're covered in the seeds, and then they grow on that in the hatchery, and then we take this out to the bay and unravel it onto the ropes in the bay, and then off of that is where you'll grow the long kelp. So this one was started in, and it's almost ready to go out. These have to be changed every day, so we do a 50% water change on each tank, and then we give them nutrients, and the lighting is specific to what stage of growth they're at. So we have it blocked off so it can get just the amount that we want.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Genia. I am an enrolled member of the Shinnecock Indian Nation here in Southampton, Long Island, New York. I'm a Shinnecock Kelp farmer, and I live on the reservation. So we are hoping and praying every single day that more people will understand how important it is to take care of our Mother Earth. We have one planet, one Earth, and we're all here together. And we need to all realize that each and every one of us is important when it comes to solutions, to the climate change, to everything really, to how you raise your children. Everything is important when it comes to fixing things that we have screwed up so royally in the last 500 years especially. And why it came to that, who knows, but we're here. And this is a part of Shinnecock Kelp Farmers is a part of something huge that we all have to, realize our importance and do, like the kids learn in kindergarten, everybody do your share. And then sometimes you're allowed to even do more. Absolutely everybody, indigenous, non-indigenous, every human being has it in their heart and soul. They are capable of this. People say, oh, it's not rocket science. Well, some of this is science, that's for sure. But it's science and culture and heritage and love all mixed up into one so that we're able to produce something that is going to help with this sacred place that we call our Mother Earth. So when we were young, as far as I can remember, like walking on the beach, and then maybe about 9 years old, that's when we were really able to see how well we could clam. And so when we were younger like that and going out there and clamming and everything, we could fill up a whole pail full of clams, scallops, mussels, snails, everything in no time flat. Like even a huge garbage can, and go home and feed everybody with plenty of food around. So, but the scallops are leaving us, the clams, the oysters, everything has to be seeded and treated like that, like almost like a science project. You have to, put back in the waters, not in a natural way anymore, because the natural way has been contaminated and polluted by mankind. So we want our children to be able to go out there and clam and collect oysters and scallops and mussels like we used to. And it's just not happening. When I take I have great grandkids now, and when we go out there, it takes us a while to even get a couple of dozen clams. So that's not right. That's not right. And the seaweed, what we used to, when we were younger, just go slipping and tripping on all over the shoreline, so we watched that get contaminated and diminish and all of that. So everything, like we said, is that circle of life, has to be treated like the sacred thing that it is. And our part is to seed the bays with our sugar kelp, and which will help restore the ecosystem with, as far as the oysters, the shellfish, and everything. Please, that's what we have to do. We have to do this for our Mother Earth and for our future generations.
We are getting ready to outplant our kelp. The kelp that you saw inside that was 2 to 5 millimeters is ready to go out, and this is one of our farms that it will go out to in the next 5 days, as soon as we get a good low tide. Unfortunately, we don't have a boat yet, so we're limited. We go out on foot in heavy waders, gloves, and outplant that way.
So this is our marine rope. So these are cut into lengths of 100, 110, it varies. And so we suspend these between the anchors. Then we take the spools and we attach the seed line as this is stretched out, and 100 feet at a time. And it's not so necessary that the water be so deep, but what we don't want to happen is when we have low tide, we don't want the string, the rope, to rise up, because then they're subjected to cold water, cold air, and no water, and they die. So, and we've had that in the past, you know, so we've had to readjust. So we're really just going out deep enough, running our 4-foot anchors low enough so that these will not drag on the bottom, but they will not be revealed at a low tide.
So it's an art and it's farming. So we rely on good weather. We rely on the lowest tide that we can get. Everything has to sink. The kelp has to be ready in the hatchery. We have to have the lowest tide preferably the lowest tide that we can get. But we've had situations where the low tide is only at 6 a.m. It's hard to staff, people, and people have, this isn't our only work that we do, so we have other obligations as well. So
You literally can do it with 2 people. At the end of the day, there's an ideal, of course, to have a team, but the work has to get done. So those of us who are available and willing, we just have to go. It's not like, oh, we'll do it next low tide when we have more people. We're gonna get it done. So we may not get as much done, but we get it done.
Well, thank you so much for inviting us to your hatchery. I think it's such a visual thing, kelp planting, and being there, I really got a feel for this mission that you guys have. And where are you guys now? I know some of the footage is of you guys. It was your first planting in this snowstorm that we got, or squall, last week. So where are you guys now in your planting?
Well, thank you so much for coming out, because it really does make a difference when you hear about our project, to actually be there and see the hatchery and see where we farm and see us out in the water. We have about 30 lines out right now. Each are about 100 feet, so about 3,000 feet. And we still have more to plant, so we're just waiting for more low tides.
And I think that's something, I loved the part when Donna was holding up the lines and showing, I think when being there on the site, you see, okay, we're dealing with something at the beginning that's super small. You're using microscopes, you're being super careful with the water, making sure it's been treated. And then you're putting it out into the wild, and there's all these lines, like a lot of equipment, but it still remains rather simple. What has been something about this whole process that you both have enjoyed working with seaweeds?
From the hatchery perspective, what I love about it is seeing something so small grow into something really incredibly powerful, that potentially can make a big difference here on the East End and beyond.
In my perspective, not being able to go out in the water with them and observing them in the hatchery and the water and every step and every move they make, it's just these women are incredible. Donna is she's the same age as me. It's like going out there and doing all this work, the physical work and everything, and then in the hatchery, what they do, the scientific work and everything, it's absolutely, and it's in our DNA to do this, to be in the water and everything. But these ladies are awesome and wonderful. To me, it's prayers being answered once again, how we can all be a part of this bigger picture of being able to put our money where our mouth is. Oh, we can complain, but to actually do the work that it takes go out in the water. It's freezing out there, with their waders and everything's on. It's incredible work, and I'm so proud to be a part of all of this on this level, this scale, and of course in the universe.
Definitely. And I think in the clip you said, oh, the 6 a.m. high or low tide at 6 a.m. That did not sound like a random example. That sounded like there was a planting that happened at 6 a.m.
I mean, it's limited when we can go out because we don't have a boat yet. We're limited to when we can go out. And I'm not a tall person, so I especially have to.
Even more limited physically.
Even more limited. So if it's 6 a.m., that's when we go. And as long as we have enough light, we go right away.
And can you walk a viewer through this process? So we have the hatchery, it's, up on the bluff, and then you're walking down with the spools, walking in with waders. What does that look like and feel like?
So it's an interesting sensation out of the water. They feel heavy. They are thermal. So they're, cumbersome, and they come up pretty high up to my chest. But once you get in the water, they're light. And it feels almost like you're walking on the moon and kind of bouncing along, and you get in sync with the water. You really must be in sync to get the planting done.
Because otherwise you feel too encumbered in a way by all these other things, or?
Just don't fight the water. Don't fight it. It will always win. So if you're working with it, it will help you get the work done that you're trying to do.
I love that. And I do think water people tend to have the most respect for water, And I think, Rebecca, you mentioned earlier about the role of being water keepers. You shared a water song. Can you share a little bit about Shinnecock women in general and that role, and maybe what calls you then to the kelp farming?
Sure. I mean, so being in the water, let's say with my grandmother when we were younger, the experiences that you just never forget, these kind of experiences when you're young and when you're with your Grammy and you're going out there clamming, and to bring my daughters, and they're grown women now, and then to bring my granddaughters and now my great-granddaughters into the water, and and wearing our pieces of wampum. I mean, clams, the sea, the shells, everything, horseshoe crabs, everything we are connected to. And we could tell you a zillion stories from when we were younger and stepping on the horseshoe crabs that hurt. And every single thing is our precious memories. And again, it's in our DNA. So our clam shells, like here, this is another thing we are trying to protect. I was opening clams last week, and the shells are so brittle in areas. So, and this is what the kelp helps to do, to clean the water so that these shells will not be brittle anymore. And you can feel this. I mean, that's
beautiful.
That's a good one. And that's the goal, is to make sure that they don't get so brittle and so contaminated. The water doesn't get so contaminated that we can't function right. And
Thank you.
Danielle can tell you, how it gets from the seed to this right here. I mean, the whole process and everything. So as we chip along, letting people know how important seaweed is, it's incredible. So, going out there with the kids, it's our way of life, and we should all be allowed to do what is in our heart and soul, in our culture and our heritage, to continue on forever, to do these things. As long as there's mankind, we should be allowed to go clam and collect scallops and eat out of the sea and use the seaweed for medicinal purposes. And also the modern way of thinking is we want to use it as fertilizers, the F word. So
Soil amendment.
Soil amendment. Mm-hmm. Yeah, soil amendment for these golf courses. and to give people the alternative to the toxic ways of living. Here's a non-toxic way of living to give back. All of the lawns that are super duper green with the poisons in it. No, you need to stop with the poisons and put the good stuff back in the ground. Everybody can do this.
Definitely. And I think, you spoke about this in the Hatchery film of how when you were growing up, there was like a lot more clams and there were seaweeds all over the shore. I think one thing that maybe this newer generation might not understand is that like a lot of what, like the work that you guys are doing is replacing what 300 years ago would have been, it wouldn't have been farmed, right? Like those seaweeds probably would have been growing, maybe not directly there, but there would have been more seaweeds in general. And I think that's something that I know growing up in Southampton, I didn't really realize how many of the clams were seeded that, I go clamming for now. And I guess I'd love to hear from you about how, you see the Shinnecock Kelp Farmers work kind of replicating or stewarding what maybe has gotten out of sync in nature.
Ooh, has it ever gotten out of sync? I mean, the dredging, and I'm talking about this, 6 decades and plus that I've been alive on this earth and witnessing. We saw the dredging going on, in the last 40, 50 years maybe. We've seen the different kind of techniques that are not conducive to the balance, and they're the opposite. They're like, it's almost like torturing the earth. You're ripping up the bay bottoms, so that somebody can have so much and the next person has nothing. So that's what has to be brought to light, is that you can't continue to live this irresponsible lifestyle and expect for everybody to have something. And we're not about the haves and the have-nots. We're about the balance, and everybody's allowed to have the equal shares, especially, our tribal living. Everyone should have the equal right to have scallops, oysters, everything. But if it's being contaminated and that's taken away, that's huge in our world. So to have, the town of Southampton to allow people to take and take and take, that has to be questioned too, and dealt with in a way. It's like we have to teach Southampton town again to not take so much. You have to put back. You have to do things in a proper manner. And I think that maybe we're getting through a little bit.
And do you think, how do you feel like your work is supported or not supported by like the New York State DEC, or has it been difficult working with these state regulatory bodies? I know you guys posted something on your Instagram about that recently.
So recently we had a little visit from the New York State Econ Police, and they were very friendly. They did come in hot and direct.
As I feel like the water police, they love to do that. They're like,
it was intimidating, but we have indigenous rights that we've preserved, and we are a sovereign people. We're sovereign individuals, and we are growing sugar kelp for everyone's benefit. Sugar kelp is the most friendly crop that in every part of its growing season. It is sequestering nitrogen and carbon when it's growing. It's an amazing soil amendment once we use it in gardening and growing in people's individuals' gardens, as well as larger municipalities as well. So it's just all good. They were mostly, I think they were wondering about whether we were looking for scallops, I think.
oh, because
I'm not
scallop
really sure.
season opened recently, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
And, one thing, I think we've alluded to this a little bit, but if you ever look at like the colonial documents, seaweed is all over. There, like the right to access seaweed was for the colonialists, and also I know like that was the basis for the Shinnecock reserving a lot of rights as well with these early treaties. Could you share a little bit about the history of Shinnecock with seaweeds?
So we've always used it. Traditionally, we've used it for a myriad of activities. So it's amazing for your health. It has minerals, as well as we've used it for pest control, as well as insulation in your homes. So this is nothing new to us. Using it as a soil amendment is nothing new. We've always used it alongside our crops with, a little fish. You mix it in together and you get great growth. Nothing new. What's new is that we're using science to cultivate it now.
I love that. And I think it's like, I feel like there's this movement right now in environmental science, or just thinking of kind of, let's figure out what these things are. Like, the making of old is new again, right? We're not reinventing the wheel here, but we're just doing something that is positive for the environment and also benefits us. And I think, when talking about the lawns and things, like, it's the closing of the nitrogen circle. Like, and out here we have this excess nitrogen that has been, a big problem for a lot of our bays, and why sometimes we can't have shellfish. So have you seen, like, where you guys have planted, have you seen other species come back? I know you guys have been there for a couple years now.
Absolutely. So that's another one of our goals, is to create a habitat, a marine habitat. We're not just growing sugar kelp. We're inviting all other sea life in. The most darling has been a little tiny scallop that took up space on one of our lines. And they're endangered in the Peconic. There was a 99% die-off. They're still not doing well. But to see that little guy holding on and finding a place in our farm was very satisfying.
And when I was there, I think I didn't appreciate how much work you guys have to do to just get fresh water into the hatchery. You make it look very easy. Can you explain a little bit about that process?
So it's not an easy process for us. We started out our first year, Mike Dole at Stony Brook was good enough to share some of their purified water with us, but we had much fewer tanks and we didn't have as great of a need. But once we started increasing our hatchery size and our spools, we knew we had to purify our own water. So that has been a really amazing development for us, and we've been doing well with it. We collect it at high tide from the bay, and then it goes through our system and we treat it ourselves.
And so before that, you guys were collecting it from the Marine Science Laboratory.
In 5-gallon containers.
Wow. That's
because they were manageable. 5-gallon was manageable for us.
You can carry 5 gallons.
I can carry 5 gallons.
And then can you share a little bit about where you guys are? It's a very unique location, very cool, I think, and beautiful as well.
Do you want to talk about?
Sure. So over there at the villa, the Sisters of St. Joseph, we've had a relationship with them probably for 20 years, but very recently we have been communicating very closely with each other, and especially when it came to starting the kelp. I don't know, it just dawned on me, talk to them. They have their villas right on the bay. And that's exactly what we did. We just opened up the lines of communication with the Sisters of St. Joseph, and they were like, yes, 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 yes. Anything you want to do, let's do it. And that's why it was so important with our sovereignty as indigenous people to be able to, let the sisters and everyone else know, if there are challenges, we're going to pull up this sleeve and roll up that sleeve, and we're going to be ready for any challenges that come our way, because we take our sovereignty wherever we go. And we took our little sovereignty over to the Shinnecock Bay side of the Sisters of St. Joseph Villa. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, beautiful area. We're right at home. It's our ancestral territory, that is for sure. We're right within our homelands, and we do so many things together. They're so cooperative, and thank goodness we have, we work very well together.
And so it's hosted, the hatchery is actually a former cabin at what is a spiritual retreat for the sisters. when you guys first planted down on, and it's overlooking, I think you can tell from the video, but it's overlooking the tribal, like the Shinnecock tribal territory now, and then as well, it is in this greatly important area that I know, Rebecca, you've done a lot of work with the graves protection as well. When you first went there, were you nervous about working out of there, or did you think that, given the relationship, that this would work well?
Everything kind of really felt, it felt really comfortable. It felt right. So when you're standing at the villa and you're looking at the Shinnecock Bay, like directly across there is one of the main places that we have recently been able to protect, purchase, and preserve with the cooperation. Oh, is that a wrong word to use when it comes to the town of Southampton? I meant to say with the, I don't know. So with the town of Southampton, the Graves Protection Warrior Society, the Peconic Land Trust, all of us working as a team together, with this indigenous leadership saying this Sugarloaf Hill is what we have to reclaim. It was, unfortunately, the town of Southampton did let it get developed about 45 years ago or something like that, where our sacred hill was desecrated and the graves that were there were destroyed. And when it came time again to, Sugarloaf came up for sale again. And that's when it took on this new light of, we can do this. We'll ask them to put their money in and we'll gather this money and we will buy this so we can purchase, preserve, and protect this ancient, beautiful cemetery that was somehow taken from us in 1859. The entire hills were taken from us. And that's when Shinnecock people were shoved onto our 800-acre neck right now. So it's huge, it's history, and we have every intention in doing the best that we can these days to get the land preservation back on track, to stop the desecration of our sacred places, especially right there in our Shinnecock Hills, our homelands, which includes the Shinnecock Hills Golf Course too, where graves were desecrated to construct that golf course in 1898, and all the way through 1902, where that construction began, and our cemeteries were destroyed and desecrated to, build a golf course, or 2 or 3 or 4. There's National, there's Southampton, there's Seaweed. So yeah, there's a lot of land injustice, and us as Shinnecock women, we know that that's not what we want to continue on with, the injustices of the past. We want to fix some things here and pass that on to our children, that, we are still here, we are stewards, we are caretakers of this land, and we take it very seriously.
And I think that legacy, just knowing the work that you both have done to continue that and pass that legacy down to the next generation is really impressive. With the graves protection, the property that is in Niamak Trust now, the Niamak Trust. What is happening on the legal level of protections? I know New York State is one of the few states that doesn't have, or hadn't had for many, many years, any kind of grave protections. And I know you've been working on this since the 80s.
Well, actually, we were born into this.
Okay.
So, and I remember, again, as a little girl, going through the hills with my grandmother and her saying that these hills were ours. And in 1859, she would give us the whole history of how we got shoved into a swamp, and we, the town of Southampton really, took a lot of the land for their own, put us onto the swamp, and, so. And a bad part of the history, they really figured we would just die off in another couple of generations, because who can live in a swamp, So this modern day, we have respiratory illnesses and things like that come from living in a swamp. So so we have to, think about all of that. And what was your question again? I'm sorry, I'll go off.
No, that was very on target. I think the kind of legacy of where we stand now in New York State with
Oh,
graves
the
protection.
unmarked burial laws. Oh my goodness, huge. So to get Governor Hochul to actually sign the unmarked burial laws, finally, she did sign the unmarked burial laws for New York State. And let's see, September 2020 is when we got the town of Southampton to actually adopt the unmarked burial laws. But unfortunately, they kind of ignore that. So that's why we're really thankful that New York State has passed these laws. And so we have a little bit more to fight with and to go on, because New York State was only one of 4 states in the whole country that didn't have unmarked burial laws. So that's huge in New York State to have this passed. But one of our things that we wanted to remind people of is one of the reasons why, we believe that New York State, which includes, of course, Long Island, didn't want to have these laws passed, is because, a lot of times these developers, they don't want to have to answer to anyone. And so the overdevelopment is choking all of us. The overdevelopment of Long Island is not good for anybody. Our animals are suffering, our plant life, our marine life, everything is suffering for overdevelopment, for greed and profit. So hopefully these unmarked burial laws will help us have some power to fight with, to preserve and protect land based on there are unmarked burials all over our ancestral territory. And if we can stop some of the overdevelopment through the graves protection efforts, it just works hand in hand. Everyone will be happy. The graves won't be disturbed. The animals will have more of a place to live. The plant life, the trees, everything, the aquifers, everything will benefit from putting a stop to this overdevelopment, which is really, choking us out of this beautiful. And when the town supervisors say crazy things like, oh, we have to, the Shinnecocks shouldn't have the billboards put up because, it takes away from our beauty of the place. And people come from all over the world to see our natural beauty, and those signs are so horrendous and horrible looking. We're like, are you serious? To the town supervisors, look what you're doing to the nature, the natural. Long Island, in one hand, you're letting the developers just rip up, butcher, rip roar right through Long Island, and you're upset about some billboards, So we have to always bring these things to their attention, like, you're not even being fair. You don't even, need to say things like that. If you need to protect this Long Island and help us protect it, not it's them against us all the time. We have to do this together.
I think that's such a great message, and we're going to actually call Tila Trogue, who's a lawyer and director of Shinnecock Kelp Farmers, and she's going to share a little bit about that at the end of our time in studio today. One thing that I would love for you guys to explain is the kind of connection that exists between climate change and kelp farming, and why, you mentioned earlier that the Shinnecock were pushed onto this swampland, which is now the tribal territory or reservation. Why is it so important being located there with global warming and with sea rise to do something like kelp farming?
We are a frontline community, and we have nowhere else to go. So when you're hearing on the news about sea rise and acidification, and you're able to move yourself from Southampton Village into higher ground, good for you. It is not good for us. So for us, it became an imperative, a moral imperative, to preserve our way of life and to make a change for everyone, not just for our community, but for yours and everyone else's for the next 7 generations. We're not looking at just for our grandchildren. We're going well beyond that. Everything that we do at Shinnecock Kelp Farmers is for future generations. We want to be known as good ancestors. They may not know my name, but they will know that this group of 6 women did everything that they knew that they could. They used the science that was available. Of course, science is going to change. And as new things happen at Shinnecock Kelp Farmers, we develop as well. We don't stay with, what we know and what we do. We change. That's what science is. So we want to be known as good ancestors for time immemorial.
And, we only have a little bit of time here left, but the work that you guys are doing with the science, with these gametophyte kelp spores, is very cool and exciting. I got to see a little bit of that at the hatchery. Can you share a little bit about that work? Because I think it also speaks to the work that you guys are doing to fight climate change everywhere, not just on Long Island or in New York. This is kind of an answer for everyone.
It is. So we have 2 primary partners. One we talked about before is the Sisters of St. Joseph, and our other is Green Wave, who delivers amazing scientific technical support for us. And they are, due to warming waters, it's very difficult to find natural source tissue, which is what we get our seed from. We have divers that go out, and we're so grateful to those divers. But it's hard to find, and sometimes it's not a great sample, or sometimes it's late in the season, and the later in the season it is, the harder it is to get them to grow. So Green Wave is developing ways to preserve and reproduce seed in a lab so that we're not as dependent on what's naturally found. And then we have one tank that is the one that you saw in the film that is above and beyond so much, because we were able to get it in the tank much earlier. It's just doing amazingly well.
And so if you have the kelp has grown to a certain size in the hatchery, then can you explain a bit about this timeline? Because I feel like kelp, when it's growing, it seems so luscious, but it's very sensitive at these kind of critical stages.
So it's sensitive in terms of hygiene and sanitation. We always try to keep as few people in the hatchery as possible. We're religious about cleaning and water changes and that kind of thing. So it's a constant battle with, feeding them well, giving them the right light, giving them the nutrients. We were trying to give them the best start, and we started a program called Kind Words. So we found that we were singing to our plants every day and talking to them just like we were nurturing any other kind of creature. And we just formalized it a little and invited people from the community to come in and share. Sometimes people give prayers, they sing songs, and we've seen amazing growth and support once they get into the water.
And I love when you were sharing this with me, you said you don't have a control group because you feel too bad to...
Yes. I'm hoping that someone somewhere else will have the control group, but we were not able to. We sing to we take care of all of them the same. No one
I'm just
is left out. No one's left out.
That's good. I'm imagining like a tank with like sound equipment around, because I also don't know how you would even protect it from the songs. And was that a nice way to connect with the sisters as well during COVID? I'm sure they might have been more lonely or...
For sure. So a lot of the sisters are elderly and infirmed, and sometimes they are not able to get out to the villa. So this was one way that we could invite them in and they could get involved. They were hearing all about our project. They're hearing about how the work that we're doing, and they're so interested, but they can't come out. So to be able to invite them for Kind Words over Zoom really gets them involved and touches their heart, and they feel like they're a part of what we're doing. And that's what we're here today trying to do, is find other water protectors. This is not something that we can do alone. We want everyone who has waterfront property, who is interested in kelp farming, to get involved in any way they can. Not everyone can go into Shinnecock Bay when it's 38 degrees. That's not for everyone. But everyone can do something. And we hope that we're an inspiration for others to find their something.
And what, for people who are watching this at home, you mentioned if someone has waterfront property, what are other ways that people could support you guys?
Change your septic system.
Okay.
That's a really big source of runoff into our waterways. And it's an expensive proposition to change out and a big undertaking, but there's real value there for everyone.
And I know now Bridgewater Environmental, they will help guide you through the process and can find tax credits. But it is, I mean, it's nothing that is, I think, exciting for homeowners or anyone, but it can have such a great impact on our bays. And are there other ways that people can support you, like directly, the work that you guys are doing?
Sure, the work that we do is fully donation funded. So donations are always welcome, large and small, and even just talking about our project, spending time talking to your family about what we're doing, what you can do. They can find us on any social media or on our website.
And just because we saw a little bit of it, but we didn't mention it, the kind of end product of all of this is this dried puree, or not pureed, but dried and crunched up kelp, processed kelp that's used as a biostimulant. I know Donna uses it in her garden. I know some other folks who do. Can you talk a little bit about that before we wrap up here?
Sure. So that's available. We go to farmers markets, and it's really one-on-one when we're meeting people that we share our soil amendment. As we scale up, we'll have more and more available. The last few years, we've had about 300 to 400 pounds of dried soil amendment available. So
Wow.
It's exciting. We're just going to keep growing.
I also think, so one of the craziest things about kelp is that, you guys know this, but when you process it, you lose 90% of its weight. So 30 to 40 pounds of dried kelp, that's actually quite a lot of what had been wet kelp.
Yeah, by hand. And we do harvest by hand.
Wow, that's impressive. And thank you guys so much for coming. I just wanted to wrap things up before we call in Tila. But it really means a lot that you're here in the studio. And if anyone is watching from home, I really encourage to follow you guys on Instagram. You post great updates and can follow the work that all 6 of you are doing in various avenues and everything.
And we're working on a children's book too.
Oh, I love that.
Yes, we are working diligently on that children's book.
Yes.
Hopefully that will be out soon, which we hope to put in every school that there is, because we want to encourage from the as soon as you can read, encourage to be a kelp farmer.
That is so cool. And will it use Shinnecock words?
It will,
cool.
and a song that I wrote. So yeah, it's all mixed up in one. And
Oh, amazing. When that comes out, we'd love to have you back and you can sing the song. Okay, and here we're about to hear from Tila Trog, the director of Shinnecock Kelp Farmers, and she's going to share an update about Shinnecock sovereignty with us. Thank you so much. Hello, Tila Troj. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here with us in studio. You're the executive director of the Shinnecock Kelp Farmers as well as an attorney. I'm really interested to hear how you think of sovereignty and how that relates to the mission of Shinnecock Kelp Farmers.
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. Sovereignty is at the heart of everything that we do as Shinnecock Kelp Farmers. Every time that we go out into the water and plant our kelp seeds, we're asserting our sovereignty over the water. And to me, a very essential element of sovereignty is being able to provide food to your community and your population. And we were compelled as Shinnecock Kelp Farmers to grow sugar kelp because of the decline in marine life that we witnessed in the Shinnecock Bay. And so to us, this act of planting is an act of asserting sovereignty and an act of feeding our people at the same time. I mean, essentially, it's one and the same. We have for thousands of years survived in the beautiful abundance of this area, and it's only now in modern times that we see the devastation to our ecosystem that's been caused by climate change. And as indigenous people who have experienced a massive land loss and relocation onto a very small area of land that's at or below sea level, we're really on the front lines of taking action against the very harmful effects of climate change. And so for us, sugar kelp cultivation is a way to address some of these problems, specifically for us, the problem of ocean acidification, which is something that happens as a result of excess carbon in the atmosphere. And we're able to use our plants' system of photosynthesis to sequester some of that carbon and also introduce oxygen into the environment in a way that really facilitates a huge amount of biodiversity in our bays. And so we're trying to make it a more habitable place for not only us as Shinnecock people, but all of our relatives in the sea as well. And so when as an attorney, when you start to really examine what sovereignty looks like, for us, we rely on very ancient agreements with the first settlers and colonists who came here that reserve our rights to seaweed, which to me is really what propelled me to do this work.
I'm so glad that you mentioned the kind of colonial documents about and reserving the right of seaweed, because that was something we discussed in studio. And actually, Rebecca brought a beautiful clamshell from Maine and was sharing about how, clam shells and scallop shells, all of those used to be much thicker, she remembered growing up. And because of the acidification and the warming waters, they're just not thick enough to make like some kinds of wampum and things. I know you were the founding member of the Shinnecock Kelp Farmers. We only have about a minute left, but could you share about why this mission was so important to you?
So this was really important to me because of our struggle to achieve federal recognition and our struggle to have our sovereignty recognized by the United States. And it came down to us being able to show evidence through a group of cases called the seaweed cases, which are legal cases that are filed in Suffolk County that declare that Shinnecock people have the rights to all seaweed that is grown on underwater land. And so to me, that was so powerful that seaweed could be a source of sovereignty.
That's such a beautiful image to leave us with. Thank you so much, Tila, for joining us in studio today, and looking forward to seeing you out on the water.
Thank you.
Thank you to Tila for joining us, and thank you so much for our guests today in studio. It was wonderful having you on, and I can't wait to hear how this kelp season goes for you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Alexandra. Thanks for coming out and caring so much.
Thank you.